The notification sound from my phone had become my personal torture device. Not because it rang too often, quite the opposite. Every ping reminded me that my wife Neera had systematically blocked me from every digital channel we'd shared for 12 years of marriage. Facebook? Blocked. Instagram? Blocked. Even our shared Spotify playlist showed user unavailable when I tried to add songs. The woman who used to send me grocery lists through 17 different apps now treated my contact like radioactive waste. My name is Hayes Rellan, and I'm a copywriter for a mid-sized advertising firm in downtown Chicago. I craft persuasive messages for a living, yet somehow I'd lost the ability to communicate with the person sleeping 20 feet away from me every night. Well, when she actually came home to sleep. I need space, Hayes. That's what she'd said 3 weeks ago, standing in our kitchen wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Designer, expensive, definitely not purchased with our joint account. I need to figure things out. Space, the final frontier of failing marriages. I was sitting in my garage office, my man cave, as Neera used to call it mockingly, staring at my laptop screen. The cursor blinked accusingly in the empty email draft. What do you write to someone who's made it crystal clear they don't want to hear from you? My phone buzzed. A text from Brady, my best friend who bartends at O'Malley's downtown. Dude, saw Neera at Chez Laurent last night. Wasn't alone. My stomach twisted, but not with surprise. I'd been expecting this confirmation for weeks. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started showering immediately after coming home. The signs were there for anyone paying attention, and despite what Neera thought, I'd been paying very close attention. I typed back, details? Guy in expensive suit, BMW keys on table, looked cozy. BMW. That narrowed it down considerably. Only one person in Neera's orbit drove a vintage BMW and had the arrogance to leave his keys visible during dinner dates. Dean Calix, her creative director at the advertising agency where she worked as an account manager. Dean wasn't just any coworker. He was Neera's college boyfriend, the one she'd claimed was just a friend when she took the job at his firm 2 years ago. The one who'd sent her congratulatory flowers on her birthday last month. Flowers I'd assumed were from a client until I saw his name on the card. I leaned back in my desk chair and surveyed my surroundings. The garage had become my sanctuary over the past month, equipped with everything a man needed for extended isolation. Mini fridge, coffee maker, comfortable furniture, and most importantly, a filing cabinet with a folder labeled Exit. The Exit folder wasn't something I'd created recently. I'd started it 5 years ago, after the first time Neera had demanded space. That episode had lasted 2 days and ended with tears and promises to communicate better. But it had taught me a valuable lesson. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Inside that folder were copies of financial statements, property deeds, insurance policies, and a detailed timeline of our relationship's decline. Also included were the business cards of 3 different attorneys, each vetted and ready to take my call. My phone rang. Neera's ringtone. I hadn't changed it yet, though I probably should have. Hayes? Her voice sounded strained, almost panicked. That's my name. Where are you? I thought we were meeting for dinner tonight. I glanced at my calendar, then at the date on my phone. Our anniversary. 12 years of marriage, and she'd apparently forgotten until the last minute. You told me you needed space, remember? I'm giving you space. But it's our anniversary. I made reservations at Chez Laurent. Chez Laurent. The same restaurant where Brady had seen her last night, with Dean. The audacity was breathtaking. Funny choice of restaurant, I said. Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear her calculating, trying to figure out what I knew. I don't know what you mean. I'm sure you don't. Enjoy your dinner, Neera. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were surprisingly steady as I opened the Exit folder and pulled out the first attorney's card. Zara Meller, family law specialist, 5-star reviews, reputation for aggressive representation. Time to make a call. Zara's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel reaching toward the gray Chicago sky. She was younger than I'd expected, probably mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. Tell me about your situation, Hayes. I laid out the facts methodically. The request for space, the blocked communications, the suspicious behavior, the anniversary dinner at the same restaurant where she'd been seen with another man. Do you want to save your marriage? Zara asked. I want to protect myself. She nodded approvingly. Smart. What assets are we talking about? I pulled out a detailed list. Joint savings account, checking account, the house, my retirement fund, her car loan that I'd co-signed. Everything we'd built together over 12 years. I can have temporary protective measures in place by tomorrow morning, Zara said. Asset freeze, documentation requirements, the works. But are you sure you want to take this step? Once we start, there's no going back. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I thought about Neera's voice on the phone, the panic when she realized I wasn't going to show up and play the fool. I thought about Dean's BMW keys casually displayed on their dinner table, marking his territory. Do it. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to my office. I had presentations to prepare, campaigns to review, a normal day of work ahead. But first, I had a phone call to make. Corbin's Chez Laurent. This is Corbin speaking. Corbin Findler had been my study partner in college marketing classes. Now he managed one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. More importantly, he was discreet and owed me a favor from when I'd helped him land the job 5 years ago. Corbin, it's Hayes Relin. Hayes! Man, it's been too long. What's going on? I need to ask you about something sensitive. My wife was at your restaurant last night. Neera Relin, reservation probably under a different name. Pause. Hayes, you know I can't. She's having an affair, Corbin. I just need to know what happened. Another pause, longer this time. The reservation was under Calix, Dean Calix. Your wife showed up, waited about 30 minutes. Guy never showed. She tried to pay with a card that got declined, had to call someone to come get her. Looked pretty upset. Dean had stood her up, on our anniversary. While she was waiting for him, she'd called me, probably as a backup plan. The humiliation must have been intense. Thanks, Corbin. I owe you. Hayes, whatever's going on, I hope you work it out. Oh, we will, one way or another. I spent the rest of the day in meetings, but my mind kept wandering to Neera's situation. The declined card meant Zara's asset freeze was already in effect. Neera was probably discovering right about now that she couldn't access our joint accounts. My phone stayed silent all day. No calls, no texts, no desperate messages. Either Neera was handling her financial crisis with remarkable composure, or she was too proud to admit she needed help. I got my answer when I pulled into our driveway at 6 o'clock. Neera's car was parked at an aggressive angle, blocking half the garage. She'd clearly arrived in a hurry. She was waiting in the kitchen, still wearing her work clothes but looking frazzled. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, and I could see the stress lines around her eyes. Hayes, we need to talk. I thought you needed space. Don't be sarcastic. Something's wrong with our accounts. My card was declined today, and when I called the bank, they said there were restrictions on the accounts. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Restrictions? You know what I'm talking about. What did you do? I granted your request. What request? You asked for space. I'm giving you space. All the space you need. Her face flushed red. Hayes, this is ridiculous. We're married. You can't just freeze me out of our own accounts. Actually, I can. Temporary protective measures while we figure things out. You wanted to figure things out, remember? She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. In 12 years of marriage, I'd never been the one to make unilateral decisions. I was the accommodating husband, the one who went along with her plans and preferences. This new version of me was clearly unexpected. You can't do this. I already did. I walked to the counter and picked up a manila envelope I'd placed there earlier. This is for you. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a formal letter from Zara's office, outlining the temporary asset restrictions and requesting detailed financial disclosure from both parties. You hired a lawyer? You asked for space to figure things out. I figured I should do the same. Neera sank into one of the kitchen chairs, still holding the letter. Hayes, this is insane. We can work through this. We don't need lawyers. We don't need space either, but here we are. I never said I wanted a divorce. You never said you didn't. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, maybe even sorry. But then her expression hardened. You're going to regret this, Hayes. I won't let you destroy everything we've built together. Everything we built together? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Neera, you've been systematically dismantling everything we built together for months. I'm just making sure there's something left to divide when you're finished. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I'm not staying here tonight. Your choice. The house will be here when you're ready to talk. Really talk, not just demand things. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back. This isn't over, Hayes. No, I agreed. It's not. After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't reacting to Neera's demands or trying to guess her next move. I was setting the terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Brady. Heard through the grapevine that Dean's been bragging about his complicated situation with a married woman. Want to grab a drink and discuss strategy? I smiled as I typed back. Absolutely. But first, I need to make another call. Zara answered on the second ring. How did she take it? She asked. About as well as expected. What's our next move? That depends. How far are you willing to take this? I looked around the kitchen where Neera and I had shared thousands of meals, where we'd planned our future and argued about our past, where she'd told me she needed space while wearing a dress bought with money I didn't recognize. As far as necessary. The next morning brought the first real test of my new strategy. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing copy for a client's campaign, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was unmistakably familiar. Hayes, this is Marta. Neera's mother. A woman who'd made her disapproval of me clear from our first meeting 12 years ago. Marta Castellano had wanted her daughter to marry someone with more ambition, code for more money, and higher social status than a copywriter could provide. Hello, Marta. What exactly do you think you're doing to my daughter? Straight to the point, as always. I'm giving her what she asked for. Don't play games with me, young man. Neera is beside herself. She spent the night here crying, saying you've lost your mind. Did she mention why she needed space in the first place? Silence. Either Neera hadn't shared the details of her extracurricular activities, or Marta was choosing to ignore them. Marriage requires compromise, Hayes. You can't just shut down when things get difficult. You're right about compromise. I've been doing it for 12 years. Now it's Neera's turn. She loves you. She has an interesting way of showing it. Another pause. I don't know what you think you know, but... Marta, I appreciate your concern, but this is between Neera and me. If you think you can just abandon her, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm protecting myself while she figures out what she wants. When she's ready to have an honest conversation, she knows where to find me. I hung up before she could launch into another lecture. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with texts from Neera. My mother is upset. You had no right to be rude to her. Call me. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I ignored them all and focused on my work. Around noon, My colleague Jennifer stopped by my cubicle. "Hayes, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." I looked toward the reception area and saw a woman I didn't immediately recognize. Mid-30s, professionally dressed, nervous expression. She approached my desk cautiously. "Hayes Rellin? I'm Sarah Bell. I work with Neera." Sarah. I'd heard the name but never met her. One of Neera's closer friends at the agency, if I remembered correctly. "What can I do for you, Sarah?" She glanced around the office, clearly uncomfortable. "Could we talk somewhere private?" We found an empty conference room, and Sarah closed the door behind us. She seemed to be wrestling with something significant. "I probably shouldn't be here," she began, "but I like you, and I think you should know what's really going on." My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm listening." "Neera's been different lately, more secretive. She's been having long conversations with Dean, staying late for meetings that aren't on anyone's calendar." "Dean Calix? You know him?" "We've met. Once, briefly, at a company party. Tall, confident, expensive watch, firm handshake that lasted a few seconds too long. The kind of man who made sure you knew he was successful." Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "There's something else. Dean's been bragging around the office about his project with Neera. Says they're working on something special together." "What kind of project?" "That's just it. There is no project. I've seen the client assignments. Neera's not working on anything with Dean that would require private meetings." I felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "Sarah, why are you telling me this?" "Because Dean's married too. His wife is a friend of mine, and she has no idea what's going on. Also," she hesitated, "Dean has a reputation. This isn't his first project with a married employee." The information was valuable, but I sensed there was more. "What aren't you telling me?" "Yesterday, after your wife's card got declined at that restaurant, she called Dean. I overheard her side of the conversation. She was furious, calling him names I won't repeat. Apparently, he'd promised to meet her but decided to go out with someone else instead." Someone else. Dean wasn't just cheating on his wife with Neera. He was cheating on Neera with other women. The man was running a full-scale operation. "Sarah, I appreciate you coming to me with this. There's one more thing. Dean's been asking questions about Neera's financial situation, specifically about your joint assets. It seemed weird to me." After Sarah left, I sat in the conference room processing what I'd learned. Dean wasn't just having an affair with my wife. He was treating her like a mark in some larger scheme. The questions about our assets suggested he saw Neera as more than just entertainment. I called Zara from my car during lunch break. "I need to accelerate our timeline," I told her. "What's happened?" I filled her in on Sarah's information. Zara listened without interrupting, then asked pointed questions about Dean's behavior and Neera's recent changes in routine. "Hayes, this sounds like more than a simple affair. If this Dean character is asking about your assets, we need to assume he's advising Neera on how to maximize her position in a potential divorce. What do you recommend?" "Full documentation mode. Every interaction, every financial transaction, every communication attempt, and we need to move faster on the asset protection." "How much faster?" "I can have comprehensive protective orders filed by tomorrow morning. But Hayes, once we do this, you're committed to seeing it through. Neera's going to escalate her response." "Let her escalate. I'm tired of playing defense." That evening, I stopped by O'Malley's to meet Brady. The bar was busy for a weeknight, filled with downtown workers unwinding after long days. Brady was behind the bar, but he waved me over when he saw me arrive. "You look like a man with a plan," he said, pouring me a beer. "I'm getting there." "Good, because your wife's boyfriend was in here earlier, running his mouth." I nearly choked on my beer. "Dean was here?" "About 2 hours ago. Came in with some other suit, talking loud enough for half the bar to hear. Kept going on about how he was helping a friend navigate a difficult marriage situation." "What else did he say?" Brady leaned closer, lowering his voice. He said the friend was going to come out of this very well financially once she stopped being sentimental about her loser husband. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they hurt, I'd moved past caring about Dean's opinion, but because they confirmed my worst suspicions. This wasn't just an affair. It was a coordinated campaign to destroy my marriage and my financial security. Brady, did anyone else hear this? Half the bar, including Mike Chen, who works at First National. He was pretty interested when Dean started talking about asset transfers and joint account strategies. Mike Chen. I knew him peripherally. He was a loan officer at the bank where Neera and I had our mortgage. If Dean was discussing our financial situation in public, it meant he had detailed knowledge of our accounts and debts. I need a favor, I told Brady. Name it. Next time Dean comes in, call me. I want to hear what he has to say. Brady grinned. You got it, but Hayes, when you make your move, make sure it counts. I drove home through the quiet suburban streets, my mind racing with possibilities. Dean thought he was playing chess while I played checkers. He had no idea that I'd been preparing for this exact scenario for years. The house was dark when I arrived. Neera hadn't come home, which wasn't surprising. She was probably staying with her mother, or maybe with Sarah, or maybe she was with Dean, planning their next move. I went to my garage office and opened the exit folder. Time to add some new information and update my timeline. Sarah's visit, Dean's public bragging, the questions about our assets, it all went into the file. Then I started a new document, counteroffensive strategy. If Dean wanted to play games with my marriage and my money, I was happy to accommodate him. But we were going to play by my rules now. My phone buzzed with a text from Neera. We need to talk tomorrow. This has gone far enough. I typed back, I agree. But we're going to talk with lawyers present. Mine will call yours in the morning. Her response came immediately. I don't have a lawyer. You should probably get one. I turned off my phone and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The morning brought another call from Zara. The protective orders are filed, she said. Full asset freeze, documentation requirements, and a formal request for financial disclosure from both parties. Neera will be served papers this morning. What should I expect? Panic, anger, threats, probably in that order. She's going to realize that her financial situation just became very complicated. And Dean? If he's been advising her, he's about to discover that his advice was based on incomplete information. Hayes, are you prepared for this to get ugly? I looked around my garage office, at the files and documents I'd been accumulating for years, at the evidence of a marriage slowly falling apart, and a husband who'd finally decided to stop pretending everything was fine. Zara, it's been ugly for months. Now it's just going to be honest. The process server found Neera at her office. I know this because she called me 17 times in the span of 20 minutes, each call going straight to voicemail because I'd turned off my phone during a client presentation. When I finally listened to the messages, they told the story of a woman watching her carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Message 1. Hayes, what is this legal document? Call me immediately. Message 5. You cannot be serious about this. We need to talk right now. Message 12. My lawyer says these asset freezes are extreme. You're being vindictive. Message 17. Fine. If you want to play games, we'll play games. The last message was different. Calmer. More dangerous. Neera had moved past panic and anger into strategic thinking mode, which meant she was probably getting advice from someone who understood legal maneuvering. Someone like Dean. I was proven right when Jennifer approached my desk again around 3 o'clock. Hayes, there's a man here to see you. Says it's urgent. Dean Calix stood in our reception area like he owned the place. Expensive suit, confident posture, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was taller than I remembered, probably 6'2" to my 5'10", with the kind of build that suggested regular gym sessions and personal trainers. "Hayes, good to see you again." He extended his hand for a shake. I ignored it. "What do you want, Dean?" "I think we need to have a conversation, man to man." "About what?" "About the fact that you're making a difficult situation unnecessarily complicated." I looked around the office. My colleagues were trying to pretend they weren't listening, but conversations had definitely quieted. Dean had chosen his venue carefully, a public confrontation where I'd be constrained by professional decorum. "I'm not sure what you think you know about my situation," I said carefully. "I know that Neera is a good woman going through a rough patch in her marriage. I know that she's been asking for space to figure things out, and instead of giving her that space, you've decided to punish her financially." The audacity was breathtaking. Here was the man who'd been having an affair with my wife, standing in my workplace, lecturing me about how to handle my marriage. "Dean, I appreciate your concern for Neera's well-being, but this is between my wife and me. Actually, it's not." His voice carried a hint of threat now. "When you start freezing assets and filing legal papers, you're affecting more than just your marriage. Neera works for my company. Your actions are impacting her ability to do her job." "How so?" "She's distracted, upset, unable to focus on her responsibilities. That makes it my business." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. Dean was essentially threatening Neera's job security as leverage against me. "Are you saying that Neera's employment is contingent on how I handle my personal life?" "I'm saying that everyone performs better when their personal lives are stable. Neera needs stability right now, not legal warfare." Several of my colleagues had stopped pretending to work and were openly watching our conversation. Dean had miscalculated. Instead of intimidating me, he was creating witnesses to his inappropriate involvement in my marriage. "Dean, let me be very clear about something. What happens between Neera and me is none of your business. If you have concerns about her work performance, I suggest you address them through proper HR channels." His confident smile faltered slightly. "Hayes, I'm trying to help you here. You're making decisions that you're going to regret. The only thing I regret is not making them sooner. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Enlighten me." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Neera has options. Good options. She doesn't need to stay in a marriage with someone who won't support her growth." There it was. The implicit threat that he could offer Neera something I couldn't: financial security, career advancement, a different kind of life. What he didn't realize was that he'd just admitted to his role in undermining my marriage. "Dean, I think this conversation is over. Think carefully about what you're doing, Hayes. Some decisions can't be undone." After he left, I sat at my desk trying to process what had just happened. Dean had essentially threatened me in front of witnesses, revealed his inappropriate level of involvement in my marriage, and confirmed that he saw Neera as someone he could control through her job security. I called Zara immediately. "He came to your workplace?" she asked incredulously. "Full intimidation mode. Threatened Neera's job security if I don't back down from the asset protection." "Hayes, that was incredibly stupid of him. He just created evidence of coercion and workplace harassment. Did anyone witness the conversation?" "Half my office." "Perfect. I want you to write down everything he said, word for word, while it's still fresh. Then I want you to ask your colleagues to do the same. We're going to need their statements. Zara, how far can we take this? If he's using workplace leverage to interfere in your marriage, we can take it very far indeed. But first, let's see how Neera responds to today's developments." I didn't have to wait long. Neera was sitting in her car in our driveway when I got home, engine running, talking animatedly on her phone. When she saw me, she ended the call and got out of the car. She looked different, more polished than usual, like she'd spent extra time on her appearance. New jewelry I didn't recognize, professional makeup, the kind of outfit she wore to important meetings. "We need to talk," she said. "I agree. Hayes, this legal stuff has to stop. We can work this out between us." "Can we? Because your friend Dean seems to think he's part of the conversation." Her face flushed. Dean was trying to help. "By threatening me at my workplace?" "He wasn't threatening you. He was trying to make you understand how destructive you're being." I unlocked the front door, and we went inside. Neera followed me to the kitchen, where she sat down at the table like she was preparing for a business negotiation. "Hayes, I know you're hurt. I know this situation isn't what either of us wanted, but these legal maneuvers aren't solving anything." "What would solve something?" "Communication, compromise, working together instead of against each other." "I tried communication. You blocked me on every platform we used to share. I tried compromise. You said you needed space. Now I'm working with you by giving you exactly what you asked for." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "Then what did you mean, Neera? Because from where I sit, it looks like you wanted the freedom to explore other options while keeping me as a safety net." She was quiet for a long moment. "It's more complicated than that." "Explain it to me." "Dean and we have history. You know that. When I started working at his firm, old feelings came up. I was confused. Confused enough to have an affair? We haven't. It's not what you think." "What is it then?" Another pause. "We've been spending time together, talking about what we want from life, whether the choices we made years ago were the right ones." "And what conclusion did you reach?" "I don't know yet. That's why I needed space." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd married would never have had this conversation. She would never have justified emotional infidelity as confusion or demanded space to explore other relationships while keeping our marriage intact as backup plan. "Neera, do you want to save our marriage?" "I want to figure out what I want." "That's not the same thing." "Hayes, can't you just give me time to work through this without making everything so complicated?" "You mean without protecting myself while you work through it?" "You're not in danger. I'm not trying to hurt you." "Then why is Dean asking questions about our assets? Why is he advising you on divorce strategy?" Her eyes widened. "How do you know about that?" The admission hung in the air between us. She just confirmed that Dean was indeed advising her on how to handle our marriage dissolution. "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that while you're asking me to trust you and give you space, you're actively planning for the end of our marriage." "That's not. I was just getting information. In case." "In case what?" "In case we can't work things out." I stood up from the table. "Neera, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to continue protecting our assets while you figure out what you want. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about our marriage, not about your confusion or your need for space, but about whether you want to be married to me, let me know. And if I decide I don't, then we'll handle it appropriately, with lawyers and proper legal procedures, not with secret meetings and financial maneuvering." She gathered her purse and headed for the door. "This isn't how I wanted things to go." "Neera, this is exactly how you wanted things to go. You just didn't expect me to protect myself while you figured it out." After she left, I called Brady. "How did it go with the boyfriend?" he asked. "Better than expected. He made some serious mistakes today." "Good, because I've got more information for you. Dean was back in the bar tonight, celebrating something with his buddies. Kept talking about how he was helping a friend secure her future." "What kind of future?" "The kind that involves divorce settlements and asset transfers. Hayes, this guy isn't just having an affair with your wife. He's actively working to destroy your marriage." "I know. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Brady was quiet for a moment. "What do you need from me?" I looked around the kitchen where Neera and I had just had what might be our last honest conversation, where she'd essentially admitted that she was planning for our divorce while asking me to trust her. "I need you to keep listening, And when the time comes, I need you to help me make sure everyone else hears what Dean's been saying. You got it, Hayes? Yeah? Make sure you're ready for whatever comes next. This guy doesn't seem like the type to go down quietly. Neither am I, Brady. Neither am I. The next morning brought a certified letter that changed everything. Not from Neera's attorney, she apparently still hadn't hired one, but from Dean's company's legal department. Mr. Relin, the letter began, it has come to our attention that you have been harassing our employees and interfering with their work performance. Any further contact with our staff will be considered trespassing and will result in appropriate legal action. I read it twice, then called Zara. They're trying to isolate Neera, she explained. If they can claim you're harassing her at work, they can justify restricting your contact and make you look like the aggressor. But I haven't contacted her at work. Doesn't matter. Dean's creating a paper trail that supports whatever narrative he's building. Hayes, we need to accelerate our timeline. What do you have in mind? A preemptive strike, full financial disclosure motion, evidence preservation order, and a formal response to their harassment claims. But first, I need you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. What? I need you to document everything Neera takes from the house, every piece of clothing, every personal item, every document. If she's planning to claim financial hardship, we need to show exactly what assets she has access to. The thought of cataloging my wife's belongings felt invasive and sad, but I understood the necessity. What if she comes to get things when I'm not here? Change the locks, today. It's your house too, and you have every right to secure it while legal proceedings are ongoing. After hanging up with Zara, I called a locksmith. Then I spent 2 hours photographing and inventorying everything in our shared spaces: jewelry, electronics, clothing, anything of significant value that Neera might claim as exclusively hers. The process was more revealing than I'd expected. Hidden in Neera's jewelry box were receipts for purchases I didn't recognize, including the expensive dress she'd worn when she asked for space. The receipts showed a credit card I'd never seen before. A secret credit card meant secret income or secret debt. Either way, it suggested Neera had been planning her exit strategy longer than I'd realized. My phone rang around noon. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. Hayes, this is Marta. We need to talk. Hello, Marta. My daughter is staying with me and she's a mess. Whatever you think you're accomplishing with these legal games, you're destroying a good woman. Marta, I'm protecting myself while Neera decides what she wants. She wants her husband to stop acting like a stranger. She wants to come home. She can come home anytime. She just needs to be honest about what's been going on. What do you think has been going on? The question hung in the air. Either Marta genuinely didn't know about Dean, or she was testing to see what I knew. Ask Neera. If she wants to come home, she needs to start telling the truth. The truth about what? About Dean Calix. About the secret credit card. About the real reason she needed space. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Then you should have a conversation with your daughter. I hung up and immediately called the credit card company whose name was on the receipts. After 20 minutes of transfers and holds, I reached someone who could help. Mr. Relin, I can confirm that there is a credit card account associated with your wife's name and social security number. However, you're not listed as an authorized user or co-applicant, so I can't provide account details. When was the account opened? I can tell you it was opened within the last 6 months. 6 months. Right around the time Neera had started working more closely with Dean. The timing wasn't coincidental. That evening, I was in my garage office when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Neera getting out of her car, followed by a man I didn't immediately recognize. Older, well-dressed, carrying a briefcase. She'd brought a lawyer. I met them at the front door. The lawyer was probably in his 60s, with silver hair and an expensive suit. He introduced himself as Robert Manning, family law specialist. Mr. Rellan, I represent your wife. We'd like to discuss a reasonable resolution to this situation. I have representation too. Any discussions should go through proper channels. Hayes, Neera said, we don't need to make this adversarial. We can work this out. We can work it out by being honest with each other. Manning stepped forward. Mr. Rellan, my client is prepared to be completely transparent about her financial situation in exchange for lifting the asset freeze. What kind of transparency? Full disclosure of all accounts, debts, and income sources. I looked at Neera. Including the credit card you opened 6 months ago? Her face went pale. Manning's expression didn't change, but I saw him glance at Neera with what looked like surprise. All accounts, Manning confirmed. And what about Dean Calix's role in this situation? What role would that be? Manning asked. Ask your client. Neera stepped forward. Hayes, Dean is just a friend who's been helping me understand my options. What options? My legal options, my financial options, my life options. While you're married to me. While we're separated. We're not separated, Neera. You asked for space. I gave you space. That's not the same as separation. Manning intervened. Mr. Rellan, regardless of terminology, it's clear that you and your wife are living apart and considering your future. My client simply wants to ensure that the process is fair and equitable. Fair and equitable would have been having this conversation before she started exploring her options with another man. I think this discussion would be more productive with all attorneys present, Manning said diplomatically. After they left, I called Zara and filled her in on the conversation. Hayes, they're feeling pressure. The fact that Neera hired an attorney means she's taking this seriously now. What about the secret credit card? That's a problem for her. If she's been accumulating debt or hiding assets, it undermines her credibility in any settlement negotiations. What's our next move? We wait for Manning to make a formal offer, but Hayes, I want you to be prepared for the possibility that Neera might try to claim you've been emotionally or financially abusive. It's a common strategy when someone's been caught in questionable behavior. Based on what? The asset freeze, the changed locks, your refusal to communicate except through attorneys. They can spin it as controlling behavior. But I only did those things after she asked for space and started having an affair. We know that. We have documentation. But they're going to try to reframe the timeline to make you look like the aggressor. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the conversation with Manning and Neera, about the way she'd looked when I mentioned the secret credit card. There were still pieces of this puzzle I didn't understand. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Brady. Dean's at the bar again. Brought friends. They're getting loud. I got dressed and drove downtown. O'Malley's was busier than usual for a weeknight, filled with the after-work crowd that had lingered into late-night drinking territory. Brady nodded toward a corner booth where Dean sat with 2 other men, all of them clearly several drinks into their evening. Their conversation was animated and loud enough to carry across the bar. I found a seat at the bar where I could hear them clearly. The thing about married women, Dean was saying, is they're so grateful for attention, especially when they're married to guys who don't appreciate them. One of his companions laughed. Sounds like you speak from experience. Let's just say I've been helpful to several friends over the years, women who needed to understand their worth. And their assets? The other man asked. That too. Amazing how many women don't realize what they're entitled to in a divorce. My hands tightened around my beer glass. Dean wasn't just having an affair with Neera. He was running a systematic operation to break up marriages and profit from the aftermath. What about the husband? The first man asked. What about him? Guy's a copywriter. Makes decent money, but nothing spectacular. No fight in him. He'll roll over when things get serious. Brady caught my eye and shook his head slightly, warning me not to react. He was right. Confronting Dean here would only create a scene and potentially undermine any legal proceedings. But listening to him dismiss me as someone with no fight while he systematically destroyed my marriage was almost more than I could handle. "So what's the end game?" one of his friends asked. "Simple. She files for divorce, claims emotional neglect and financial control, gets half the assets plus alimony. Then we see where things go from there." "And if the husband fights back?" Dean laughed. "With what? He's already isolated himself by freezing the accounts. Looks controlling and vindictive. His own actions are building our case." I finished my beer and left money on the bar. Brady gave me a subtle nod. He'd heard everything too and would remember it if needed. Driving home, I realized that Dean had made a critical error. He thought he was playing against someone with no fight, someone who would roll over when things got serious. He was about to discover just how wrong he was. The next morning, I called Zara with a new plan. "I want to go on the offensive," I told her. "What do you have in mind?" "Dean thinks I'm going to roll over. Instead, I want to expose exactly what he's been doing. Not just the affair, but the systematic manipulation and the financial scheming." "Hayes, that's a risky strategy. If we move too aggressively, we could look vindictive." "Zara, this isn't vindictive. This is self-defense. Dean is running a con game with my marriage as the target. I'm not going to sit back and let him destroy everything I've worked for." "What do you need from me?" "I need you to file a motion for full discovery, not just Neera's finances, but any communications between her and Dean about our marriage, our assets, or divorce strategy." "That's going to be expensive and time-consuming." "It's going to be worth it, because when we're done, everyone's going to understand exactly what's been happening here." "Hayes, are you sure you're ready for what we might find?" I thought about Dean's dismissive laughter, about his confidence that I had no fight in me, about Neera's secret credit card and her claims that she just needed space to figure things out. "I'm ready, Zara. Let's show them what a real fight looks like." The discovery motion hit like a small earthquake. Within hours of Zara filing the paperwork, my phone was ringing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Neera's friends, her co-workers, even her hairdresser. Apparently word had spread quickly through her social network that I was demanding access to her private communications. The most interesting call came from Sarah Bell. "Hayes, I heard about the legal filing. There's something you should know." "I'm listening." "Dean's been in panic mode all morning. He called an emergency meeting with HR and legal. Word is, he's claiming you're stalking him." "Stalking him?" "He says you've been having him followed, gathering information about his personal life, interfering with his business relationships." I almost laughed. "Sarah, I haven't been within 50 feet of Dean, except when he came to my office to threaten me." "I know that. But he's building a narrative. He's claiming you're unhinged and dangerous, that Neera is afraid of you." "Is she?" "Honestly, I think Neera's afraid of what you might uncover. She's been acting strange all week, like she's waiting for something terrible to happen." That evening, I got my answer about what Neera was afraid of. Zara called with an update on the discovery process. "Hayes, we've got a problem. Manning is claiming attorney-client privilege on most of the communications between Neera and Dean." "On what grounds?" "He's arguing that Dean was acting as Neera's advisor in contemplation of legal proceedings, which makes their conversations protected." "That's ridiculous. Dean's not a lawyer." "No, but he was advising her to seek legal counsel. It's a gray area, and Manning's using it to block access to potentially damaging communications." "What about the financial records?" "Those we can get. But Hayes, there's something else. Manning filed a counter motion claiming you've been engaging in financial abuse by freezing the accounts." "Financial abuse?" "It's a recognized form of domestic abuse. Controlling someone's access to money, preventing them from making financial decisions, using economic leverage to coerce behavior." I felt the ground shifting beneath me. "Zara, I only froze the accounts after Neera asked for space and started having an affair. I know that. We have documentation. But they're arguing that your response was disproportionate and punitive." "What's the worst-case scenario?" "If a judge agrees with them, you could be ordered to restore Neera's access to all accounts, pay her temporary support, and potentially face restrictions on your own financial activities. And the best case? We prove that Neera and Dean were conspiring to manipulate the marital assets, and the judge sees the freeze as reasonable self-protection. What do we need to make the best case happen? Evidence. Hard evidence of their conspiracy. Not just the affair, but proof that they were actively planning to defraud you in a divorce proceeding. That night, I sat in my garage office staring at the exit folder. Everything I'd prepared, all the documentation and evidence I'd gathered, might not be enough if Dean and Neera could successfully paint me as an abusive husband who'd overreacted to normal marital problems. My phone buzzed with a text from Brady. "Dean's here again. Brought a woman who's not your wife. Thought you should know." I drove to O'Malley's, but this time I didn't go inside. I parked across the street and watched through the windows. Dean was indeed there, sitting in the same corner booth, but his companion was a blonde woman I'd never seen before. They were holding hands across the table, clearly intimate. So while Neera was staying at her mother's house, worried about discovery motions and abuse allegations, Dean was out on a date with someone else. The man was playing multiple angles simultaneously. I took photos with my phone, then called Brady. "Can you hear what they're talking about?" "Some of it. He's telling her about his complicated situation with a married woman. Says it should be resolved soon, and then they can be more public about their relationship." "How long have they been together?" "Based on what I'm hearing, at least a few weeks. Hayes, this guy's running a full-scale operation. Your wife isn't his only target." The next morning, I met with Zara and showed her the photos. "This changes things," she said. "If Dean's been seeing other women while pursuing Neera, it undermines the narrative that this was a genuine emotional connection. What can we do with it? We can argue that Dean was manipulating Neera for financial gain, not conducting a legitimate relationship. It supports our theory that this was a con game rather than a simple affair. Will it be enough? Combined with everything else, it might be. But Hayes, we need to be prepared for the possibility that Neera doesn't know about the other women." "What do you mean?" "I mean she might be as much a victim of Dean's manipulation as you are. If that's the case, she might be willing to cooperate with us, rather than fight against us." The idea hadn't occurred to me. I'd been so focused on Neera's betrayal that I hadn't considered the possibility that she was being manipulated by someone with more experience in this kind of scheme. "How do we find out?" "We ask her. Directly. Show her the photos and see how she reacts. She won't meet with me without her lawyer present. Then we arrange a meeting with all parties present. Hayes, if Neera realizes she's been played, she might be willing to help us expose Dean's operation." That afternoon, Manning called to propose a settlement conference. All parties, all attorneys, neutral location. The goal was to resolve the asset freeze and discuss terms for a potential separation agreement. "They're feeling pressure," Zara explained. "The discovery motion has them worried about what we might find. Or they're confident they can manipulate the narrative in their favor. Only one way to find out." The settlement conference was held in a sterile conference room at Manning's law firm. Neera sat beside her attorney, looking tired and stressed. She'd lost weight since our last conversation, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Manning opened with a proposal: lift the asset freeze in exchange for full financial disclosure and a temporary separation agreement that would formalize our living arrangements while we worked toward a final resolution. "What kind of resolution?" Zara asked. "That depends on what both parties want," Manning replied. "But we believe an amicable divorce would be in everyone's best interest." "Based on what?" I asked. Neera spoke for the first time. "Based on the fact that our marriage is clearly over, Hayes. We can't even have a conversation without lawyers present. Our marriage is over because you decided to explore other options while asking me to trust you. I made mistakes. I admit that. But your response has been so extreme. Neera, Let me ask you something. How many other women is Dean seeing? The question hit her like a physical blow. Her face went white, and she looked at Manning in confusion. What are you talking about? She asked. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos from O'Malley's. These were taken 2 nights ago. Neera stared at the images, her hands shaking slightly. Who is she? I don't know, but based on their body language, they've been together for a while. Manning tried to intervene. These photos don't prove anything relevant to... They prove that Dean's been lying to your client, Zara interrupted. Just like he's been lying about his intentions regarding this marriage. Neera was still staring at the photos. Hayes, where did you get these? Does it matter? He told me. He said he was waiting for me to be free before we could be together properly. The pain in her voice was genuine. Whatever else Neera had done, she'd believed Dean's promises about their future together. Neera, I said gently, Dean's not waiting for you. He's using you. Manning stood up. I think we need to take a break. But Neera wasn't listening to her lawyer anymore. She was looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen in months. Vulnerability, confusion, maybe even regret. Hayes, what else do you know? I looked at Zara, who nodded slightly. I know that Dean's been bragging to his friends about helping married women understand their worth in divorce proceedings. I know he's been asking detailed questions about our assets. I know he's done this before with other marriages. That's not... He wouldn't... Neera, he's been playing you the same way he's played other women. The affair, the advice about needing space, the encouragement to explore your options, it's all part of a pattern. She was crying now, quiet tears that she tried to wipe away discreetly. Manning put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off. I need to think, she said. I need time to process this. Mrs. Rellan, Manning said, I strongly advise you not to make any decisions based on unverified allegations. They're not allegations, Neera said quietly. They're explanations for things that never made sense. She gathered her purse and stood up. Hayes, can we talk? Just us? Manning objected, but Neera ignored him. We walked out of the conference room together, leaving the lawyers behind. In the hallway, she turned to face me. How long have you known? About Dean? Weeks? About the extent of his manipulation? I'm still figuring it out. I'm so sorry, Hayes. I believed him when he said our marriage was holding me back, that you were controlling and didn't appreciate me. Is that what he told you? Among other things. He said I deserved better, that I was too smart and beautiful to settle for a mediocre life. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. Our marriage felt stagnant, and he made me feel special again. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw the woman I'd married. Confused, hurt, manipulated, but still fundamentally the person I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. Neera, what do you want to do now? I want to make this right. I want to fix what I broke. Can we fix it? I don't know. But I want to try. And I want to make sure Dean doesn't do this to anyone else. That evening, Neera came home for the first time in weeks. We sat in the kitchen where we'd had so many arguments and tried to figure out how to rebuild something that had been nearly destroyed. I'll testify, she said, about Dean's manipulation, about the things he told me to do. I'll help you expose what he's been doing. Are you sure? It's going to be messy. Hayes, he made me believe that my husband was my enemy. He convinced me to betray the most important relationship in my life. Yes, I'm sure. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning, and it was enough to start planning our counterattack against the man who'd tried to destroy our marriage for his own gain. The plan we developed was audacious, risky, and perfectly suited to Dean's arrogance. Instead of fighting him in courtrooms and conference rooms, we decided to expose him in the court of public opinion, specifically in front of everyone who mattered in his professional and social circles. Neera provided the key intelligence. Dean had been planning what he called a victory celebration for the following Friday, a gathering at his downtown loft to celebrate the successful resolution of his complicated situation. He'd invited colleagues, clients, friends, and the blonde woman from O'Malley's, whom Neera now knew was named Jennifer Walsh, a marketing executive Dean had been seeing for 2 months. "He's going to announce that I'm finally free and that we can be together publicly," Neera explained. "Except he's also planning to introduce Jennifer as his girlfriend." "He's going to humiliate both of you in front of everyone?" "Worse than that. He's going to claim credit for liberating me from an abusive marriage, then reveal that he's moved on to someone more suitable for his lifestyle." The cruelty was breathtaking, but it also provided us with the perfect opportunity. Dean's ego would be his downfall. Zara was initially skeptical of our plan. "Hayes, this is incredibly risky. If it backfires, you could face charges for harassment, trespassing, maybe even assault if things get physical." "It won't get physical. And it won't backfire because we're not going to break any laws. We're just going to tell the truth." "In someone else's private residence, without permission." "Actually," Neera interjected, "I have permission. Dean invited me. I'm expected to be there." "And me?" "You're my husband. I'm bringing you as my guest." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Neera would attend Dean's party as expected, bringing me as a surprise guest. Once we had everyone's attention, we would present the evidence of Dean's systematic manipulation, not just of our marriage, but of other relationships as well. Brady had been invaluable in gathering additional intelligence. Through his network of bartenders and service industry workers, he'd identified 3 other women who'd been involved with Dean over the past 2 years. All were married or recently divorced. All had been given similar advice about their worth and their need to escape controlling husbands. Sarah Bell had also provided crucial information. Dean's behavior at work had become increasingly erratic as the pressure mounted. He'd been making inappropriate comments to female employees, bragging about his success with married women, and generally creating a hostile work environment that HR was beginning to investigate. "He thinks he's untouchable," Sarah explained. "He believes his own hype about being some kind of relationship guru who helps women find their true potential." The night of the party, Neera and I drove downtown together for the first time in months. She was nervous, picking at her nails and checking her appearance in the mirror. "What if this doesn't work?" she asked. "Then we'll deal with the consequences. But Neera, this is our chance to take control of the narrative. Instead of being victims of Dean's manipulation, we become the people who exposed him." "I'm scared." "Of Dean? Of facing all those people. They're going to know what I did, what I almost threw away." I reached over and took her hand. "You're not the first person to be manipulated by someone like Dean, but you might be the first to help stop him." Dean's loft was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, expensive art on the walls. The party was in full swing when we arrived, with about 30 people scattered throughout the open-concept space. I recognized several faces from Neera's work, along with people who were clearly Dean's social and business contacts. Dean was holding court near the bar, gesturing animatedly as he told a story to a group of admirers. He was wearing an expensive suit and his trademark confident smile. Jennifer Walsh stood beside him, looking radiant and completely unaware of what was about to unfold. When Dean saw Neera, his face lit up with triumph. When he saw me beside her, his expression shifted to confusion, then concern. "Neera, you made it!" He approached us with his arms extended, clearly intending to embrace her. "And Hayes. This is unexpected." "Hello, Dean," I said calmly. "I wasn't aware you were coming," he said to me, his tone carefully neutral for the benefit of the watching crowd. "Neera thought it would be good for us to be here together," I replied, "to clear up any misunderstandings." Dean's smile became strained. "Of course. Well, welcome to my home." He guided us toward the bar, clearly trying to maintain control of the situation. "Can I get you drinks?" "Actually," Neera said, her voice carrying clearly across the room, "we have something to share with everyone." The conversations around us began to quiet as people sensed something significant was happening. Dean's face went pale. "Neera, maybe we should talk privately first." "No, Dean. I think everyone should hear this." She walked to the center of the room, and I followed. The party guests gathered around us, curious and expectant. Jennifer Walsh looked confused but interested. "Most of you know that my marriage has been going through a difficult time," Neera began. "What you don't know is why." Dean tried to interrupt. "Neera, this isn't the time or place." "Actually, it's the perfect time and place," I said, "because everyone here deserves to know the truth about Dean Calix." The room went completely silent. Jennifer Walsh stepped closer, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. Neera pulled out her phone and connected it to Dean's sound system. Apparently, he'd given her the access codes weeks ago. "I'm going to play some recordings for you, conversations between Dean and me over the past 2 months." "You can't do that," Dean said, panic creeping into his voice. "Those are private conversations." "Actually, they're evidence of manipulation and fraud," Zara said, stepping into the room. I'd asked her to arrive 30 minutes after us, in case we needed legal backup. The first recording began to play. Dean's voice filled the room, smooth and persuasive. "Neera, you have to understand that Hayes is holding you back. He's financially controlling you, emotionally manipulating you. You deserve so much more than a mediocre life with a mediocre man." Several people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer Walsh looked shocked. The recording continued. "I can help you understand your worth, both emotionally and financially. When you're ready to leave him, I'll make sure you get everything you deserve in the divorce." Dean tried to reach for Neera's phone, but I stepped between them. "Let it play, Dean. Let everyone hear what kind of man you really are." The next recording was even more damaging. Dean's voice explaining how he'd helped other married women escape their husbands, how he'd coached them through divorce proceedings to maximize their settlements, how grateful they'd been for his guidance. "I've done this before, Neera. I know how to handle men like Hayes. They think they're in control, but they have no idea what they're up against." Jennifer Walsh spoke up from across the room. "Dean, what is this? Who is this woman?" Before Dean could answer, I addressed the crowd directly. "Dean Calix has been systematically targeting married women, manipulating them into believing their husbands are abusive or controlling, then coaching them through divorces that benefit him financially and personally." "That's not true," Dean protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Really?" Neera said. "Then explain this." She played another recording, this one more recent. Dean's voice describing his victory celebration plan. "Once the divorce is final, I'll have helped her secure a substantial settlement. Then I can move on to more suitable companionship. The whole situation will have been profitable in multiple ways." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Jennifer Walsh looked like she'd been slapped. "You were using me," she said to Dean. "While you were manipulating her, you were lying to me too." "Jennifer, let me explain." "Explain what? That you're a predator who destroys marriages for sport?" Sarah Bell stepped forward from the crowd. "There's more. Dean's been doing this at work too. Inappropriate relationships, harassment, creating hostile environments. HR is already investigating." Dean looked around the room desperately, realizing that his carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. "You people don't understand. These women needed help. Their marriages were already failing." "No, Dean," Neera said firmly. "You made them fail. You convinced women who were going through normal marital challenges that their husbands were enemies. You destroyed families for your own entertainment and profit." One of Dean's colleagues, a man I recognized from Neera's company events, spoke up. "Dean, is this true? Have you been manipulating clients and employees?" I've been helping people, Dean said weakly. By lying to them, by coaching them to make false abuse allegations, by profiting from their divorces. The crowd was turning hostile. People were pulling out their phones, recording the confrontation, sharing it on social media in real time. Dean's reputation was being destroyed as thoroughly and publicly as he'd tried to destroy my marriage. This is harassment, Dean said, looking directly at me. I'm calling the police. Please do, Zara said. I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about your systematic fraud and manipulation schemes. Dean realized he was trapped. His own party, his own guests, his own sound system had been turned against him. The man who'd spent months manipulating others had been outmaneuvered by the mediocre husband he'd dismissed. Get out, he said quietly. All of you get out of my home. Actually, Jennifer Walsh said, I think you're the one who needs to leave. This is a leased property and I happen to know the building owner. I don't think he'll appreciate learning that his tenant has been using the space for criminal enterprises. As Dean stood there, humiliated and exposed, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. He'd tried to destroy my marriage, manipulate my wife, and profit from our pain. Instead, he'd been revealed for what he truly was, a predator who targeted vulnerable people for his own gain. The party guests filed out quietly, many of them stopping to apologize to Neera and me for not seeing through Dean's manipulation sooner. Several people mentioned that they'd be reporting his behavior to appropriate authorities. As we prepared to leave, Dean made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Hayes, you think you've won, but you've destroyed your own marriage in the process. Neera will never forgive you for humiliating her like this. I looked at my wife, who was standing beside me with her head held high despite everything she'd been through. Dean, I said calmly, the only thing I've destroyed tonight is your ability to hurt other families the way you tried to hurt mine. Neera stepped closer to me and took my hand. And the only thing you accomplished was showing me how much my husband was willing to fight for our marriage. We walked out of Dean's loft together, leaving him alone with the wreckage of his carefully constructed facade. Outside, it had started to rain, a cleansing downpour that washed the city clean. What happens now? Neera asked as we reached our car. Now we go home and figure out how to rebuild what we almost lost. Can we rebuild it? I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw not the woman who'd betrayed me, but the woman who'd found the courage to expose the man who'd manipulated her. I think we can try. As we drove through the rain-soaked streets toward home, I realized that Dean had been right about one thing. Some situations do require space, but not the kind he'd been selling. The space we needed was the room to grow, to forgive, to start over. The space to grant each other a second chance.